terms of how we live life. This one says, for every so-called disaster with these words, in 5 years will this matter. Now, this is not a jet or a jail card to say, oh, it's not going to matter in 5 years. This is a way, again, to choose between what do we worry and stress about and what don't. We tend to worry a lot about little things that may or may not have an impact in 5 years. And especially in a business, many things can go wrong in a business. You need to choose where you put your energy. What are the things that are really going to matter in 5 years' time? So I find this quite a good way to filter some of the stresses that we have to deal with every day. I find people with small kids also worry about when they're going to get out of nappies. And I always say to them, no kid goes to primary school in nappies. There's a point where they will get out of nappies. So don't worry about that. Worry about other things. So it's as I say, a filter that we can use to decide what we stress about. This one says, whatever good or bad situations, it will change, and yes, we know this. But what I find in business is that we are very focused and alert when things are bad. But we forget to celebrate success. And you know what we end up doing is we end up making our teams very tired. Because you see with the vision, when I put the vision up now, vision is always in the future. It always describes a better future. But the minute you get to that vision, you come up with a new vision. And that's how it should be. But you actually never get to Durban to eat ice cream on the beach. It keeps pushing out and out and out and out. And unless you stop every now and then to say, look how far we've come. Look how well we're doing guys. We tire ourselves and other people out. So think about celebrating also the good times. And if you can't find anything to celebrate, think of something. Celebrating success is part of a change process that actually energizes people. And we must be careful that we don't tire people out when we give them a vision that's too big. This one is a consulting approach to business, and the quote says, the successful man is the one who finds out what's the matter with his business before his competitors do. I find that we tend to work very hard. Nobody can point a finger at any of us and say, you're not a hard-working person. The problem is we need to have some time to think and dream about businesses as well. Because if you're only working, and you're only doing what needs to be done between 8 and 5, and who is sitting back and saying, where are we going to be? What should we be improving? Continuous improvement is an exceptionally important part of business. And so as part of your job, you must also be able to sit back and say, what can I do better? Because unless you continuously improve, your competitors will tell you what's wrong with your business. So careful not to work too hard. Find some time to sit and dream and plan and strategize. It's incredibly important because it's the companies that do that seem to be always ahead of the curve. This one says there's no substitute for hard work. And that's very true. I find sometimes that I have two, I call them monsters myself, who are slap bang in the middle of the right generation. And they seem to think that you go to varsity, you get a degree, then you get a BMW, a corner office, and a secretary. And I'm trying to kind of put some realistic expectation forward to them, because sometimes they don't realize that it takes a lot of hard work to get here. Remember, they look at us, their parents, kind of at the peak of our careers, and look at what we have and think they can have that immediately. Yes, immediately. Yes, because how can one live without a big TV? I said to my daughter the other day, it's amazing how one can live without a TV. You can't buy your own TV. And so it's an expectation that we sometimes need to manage if we deal with some younger people context. Because it's true enough, there is no substitute for hard work. The saying goes that only grave diggers start at the top. The rest of us have to start at that bottom and work our way. So it's only when you're digging a grave that you can start from the top. Right? So remember that. So even if you change your career, you must be prepared to start at the bottom again. And to learn again and to pick up the spirit. Get used to making fast decisions. These days we are living in a 2-minute noodle world. Everything happens almost instantly. And so as a business, to remain fast and flexible and in the moment, you need to be able to make decisions. So back to the make the call, if it's wrong, or make another one. But if you know your business well enough, you will be able to make these fast decisions and take care of opportunities that come your way. Learn how to sell effectively. A lot of us say, I'm not a good salesperson. You are. We're all salespeople. You sell yourself every day to everyone And so learning how to sell effectively, I think, for any career is very important. So even if you have to go on sales training or spend some time with great salespeople, try and pick up some of those traits because it helps enormously. You have to sell ideas. You have to sell a business. And so learning to sell effectively. You can do anything but not everything. Careful not to have too busy a life. You can do anything, but not everything. So again, choice comes into place. And you know what? You don't have to be perfect at everything. You don't have to be perfect at all, in fact. You have to be effective, efficient, excellent. So think about looking at your maybe your list of to-do things and ask yourself, am I not just trying to do everything? You know, part of our ego sometimes is also that we want to do it and we don't delegate. And be careful, if you have people working with you, then they should be working harder than you to a large extent. Otherwise, you don't have time to think what to do. Say no so that you can say yes. We sometimes bad at saying no because we think we offend people. The other thing we do wrong is we don't just say no. And I'll give you an example. Women are bad at this. So your friend phones you up and says, come and have coffee with her, and you don't really want to have coffee with her, you're tired. And then you just don't want to say no, so you say, no, I can't because I have to pick up my clothes from the dry cleaner. Then she says, oh, don't worry, it's on my way, I'll pick it up for you. We've got to justify. We think we've got to justify. The problem with justifying a no is also a sales principle. Because the minute you give me a reason for saying no, what do you give me? You give me an objection to overcome. Will you buy this from me? No, I can't. Why not? I don't have money. Okay, when will you have money? I don't have budget. When will you have budget? And you know it's happened to all of us where people end up selling us into something we didn't want, but eventually we bought it and then we go home and we hate ourselves. So next time, just remember, if you say no with a reason, you give me a reason to overcome, and you are left with no defense. Never stop learning. Never stop learning.
Sorry, Lori. Between the two lessons, where does the species of people called perfectionists, where do they fit? I'm sitting here and thinking that people called perfectionists, yeah, where do they fit?
Perfection, there's a beautiful quote Michael J. Fox says that we as human beings, we should strive for excellence because perfection is actually God's business. I think that is such a wonderful quote. Now, people are called perfectionists because it feels to other people as if they can't stop until something is perfect. The problem with that is trying for perfection will make you very tired. And it takes up a lot of time. And sometimes does not add enough value. So maybe a silly example is if you have towels in the bathroom, all they really need to be is clean and dry and accessible. They don't necessarily have to hang 2 millimeters from each other at all time. And you see, so we overburden ourselves with a sense of perfection. People often also strive for perfection as a way to gain control. So I feel like I don't have control here, so now I try to control what I can, and then I become very over-controlled. Because I feel at least I can't deal with that, at least I can deal with this. And so perfectionism, to strive for that, I think, is impossible and makes people tired. And it's difficult to work with it as well. So when you ask people who are called perfectionists, we label them like that because we feel like they push us into a corner and everything has to be just so. And I think in life and in business, there's a point where things are good enough. And if it's good enough, it's not.
But then what is there's a fine line between setting high standards and perfectionism.
Excellence and perfection.
Yeah,
strive for excellence.
To me, sometimes it's just a lazy person that meets my standards.
We'll chat afterwards. No, easy. But you make a standard shoot, and I'll just make
And
a
maybe it
standard.
should just be pretty obvious and obvious.
That's
These are the
This is how it
standards.
should be done. This is
It's
how
not
I
like,
like. So I'm not saying you don't do things right. But there's a difference between right and perfectionism in my view, and the way I explain it. Perfectionism says it's good enough and it's right already. Don't have to now really go overboard with the towels, because it's not adding value. So my question would be, Is it still adding value, or is it just taking away energy? And yes, you always strive for excellence. But the rules in any business should be clear. So if you want me to do something in a certain way, then tell me how it should be done. And of course, if I don't do it that way, then I have not achieved my goal. So does that help?
And attention to detail, because most companies nowadays, they will say that they're looking for people who attend to detail.
Yes.
You see, so it's a very important principle in what you're doing.
Attention to detail is because the old saying is the devil is in the detail. And you know, in some instances, it's easy to have a vision, but you've got to take certain steps to get there. And unless you have the detail in place, the detail will come right you. So I absolutely agree with you with attention to detail. But now it's a question of if I write you an email, then it must be a properly written email. The grammar and the spelling must be correct. It must all be in the same size font. But then it's good enough. I don't spend 2 days checking maybe I should use a better word. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's what for me is the difference. And I agree with you, attention to detail for me also goes around spelling. Now people think I'm old-fashioned when I say reports and emails and so on should be spelled correctly. But my view is always, in a business, if you send me information and there's a spelling mistake on it, how do I trust your numbers? Because if you haven't checked your spelling, have you checked your spreadsheet? You know, is it 10 or 10,000 or 10 million? And that's what I think people mean by attention to detail. Because if I have a perception that you have given attention to detail, then I think it's easier to develop trust. So it's for me a question of trust. So you've given attention to detail, therefore there's trust, therefore
No, I think it comes the respect comes into it.
Yes,
Am I important enough? He didn't even correct his grammar or his spelling. So that's what he thinks of me, or as a prospective client, or do I give him my money?
Exactly.
And I would lose if somebody my money who can't spell my name correctly. There's something as simple as that.
And also you obviously work with somebody else's brand, if I can put it that way. So there should always be respect for the brand. So that also goes with attention to detail because you are representatives of a brand. And maybe ever in my lifetime I only ever meet you. And so every perception I have about Unisa or your business is based on you. So I think all of that works together. I hope that answers the question.